Now, so we have heard about starting our learner's journey through the CFR. What about the materials that we will be using to prepare them? Fret not, because we are very honored to have our next speaker, one of the most renowned publishers from Cambridge University Press, to share with us what does it mean to have a quality teaching and learning materials. So some of her works include the Cambridge Primary Path and the Storyfun Teacher's Book. So if you are using them, you might be very familiar with her work. So without further delay, please help me to welcome in the chat box Miss Emily Hurd.
Hi everybody, thank you very much for that lovely welcome. I'm just going to share my slides. Bear with me 1 second. And that should be coming up. Where are we? Okay, good. Right, I can't see the chat box anymore, but I'll get started then. So, thank you very much for having me at your conference. It's a rainy autumn morning in Cambridge, which I imagine is quite different from where you're joining me from, where I know that you're already well into your day. So my name's Emily Hurd, and I'm one of the publishers at Cambridge University Press in the primary ELT team. My main focus is on developing pre-primary courses. So I'm very interested in your conference today. I've actually been working in publishing for about 15 years now. Before that, I was a teacher, teaching English. And I've worked in publishing. I've also worked freelance as a writer, as Jason just mentioned. And I wanted to tell you about an experience of mine, because when I wrote my first pre-primary course book, I was really proud of it. And when it was published, it was hot off the press. Some copies arrived for me in a lovely box that I collected from the post office. And I showed it to my friends and my family, feeling really excited. And some of them, to my surprise, said, well, there are no words on the page. How difficult can it be to write a book like that? And I was quite shocked. And the reason I'm telling you this story, I'm sure none of you would be so rude, by the way. But the reason I'm telling you this story is because I think it illustrates something, that often the idea associated with pre-primary teaching and pre-primary materials is that it's somehow easy. And I think this is one of the biggest misunderstandings in education. Anyone who teaches early years knows that in many respects, the younger the age, the more factors there are that you have to take into account. So, just think about it from a student's point of view. Imagine you're one of these kids. You probably have an attention span of less than 10 minutes. And, your motor skills are still developing. So maybe you're not very comfortable sitting on a chair for a long period of time, or even, holding a pencil or a pen. It might be quite uncomfortable. And you might be hungry. You might be tired. You might be worried. And in all of those cases, you're probably unable to identify those emotions clearly or express those feelings very well. And if any of those things are true, the learning material you use in class is going to have to work really hard to keep your attention, to keep you interested. Now, of course, as materials developers and teachers, we can't control a lot of those factors. Children's brains develop at their own pace. But what we do have control over is the power to make choices about good learning content. Okay, let's kick off by getting you involved. I'd like to do a little survey. So this talk's all about quality, and it's a word that gets used a lot. But have you ever thought what we really mean by quality in learning materials for this age group? How would you define that? So if you could go to the chat box, could you type in a word or a phrase? You can do more than one if you like, that's fine. That really defines for you what quality means in learning materials. Now, I can't see the chat box anymore. So if someone from GPEX, like Jason or Matthew or Jenny, could read out some of the answers, you don't have to say who they're from, that would be really helpful for me, if that's okay. Especially things that come up more than once.
All right.
Oh, is that going to work?
Hi, Emily. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So some of the words that came up are interactive, fun, effective, having certain standards, meeting the objective, engaging, and appropriate.
Lovely.
I think as for now, we have these words.
That's fine. Keep them coming in if you have more ideas.
Well-planned and organized as well. Something that attracts learners' attention.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. Thank
appropriate.
You. Well, thank you very much for reading for me. And thank you everyone who's writing ideas down. We are going to save those because they're really helpful for me. The reason I'm asking you to do that is because I want to later on compare them with something that we've done at Cambridge University Press. So, you know, this really encompasses everything from books to digital materials, material for teachers, material for learners, and of course, it probably means different things for different people, right? It depends on your particular learning context. It might be for you, it might be about results. It might be about support that you get as a teacher. Or it might be about the experience right there in the classroom, in the thick of it. Are the learners engaged? Are they having fun? Like someone said, fun. Or is it about how easy it is to use for a teacher? For other people, it might be about how something looks, how the pages feel, you know, very different kind of measures of quality. So as I say, my colleagues at Cambridge University Press have also been thinking about this because as an organisation, we really pride ourselves on providing high value, top quality products. And we have a dedicated team called the Language and Pedagogy Research Team in our ELT department, who are working on defining some principles for excellence to really try and bring some clarity to this question. And they've come up with a sort of framework. You can see here the different strands of that framework as one way of looking at this question. So it'd be really interesting to think about how this compares to your answers. And I think there's a lot of correlation actually, because curriculum obviously relates to learning objectives. I'm going to talk a lot about engagement, and fun, which were words that came up. I think they link really closely to content and pedagogy. And I'm looking forward to looking more at your answers so that we can compare them further. Suffice to say that at Cambridge, we really do our best to excel in all of these 6 areas that I've got here. But today I'm going to focus on just 3 of them, the curriculum, pedagogy, and content strands. The others I think are a little bit more self-explanatory, Obviously, by design, we're referring to things like the covers, the artwork, the design features on the individual page. With digital products, it would be about the UX. With production, examples of that would be things like whether it has errors, either on the page or bugs in the software. Also, you know, things like, do the pages tear? Are they easy for kids to handle? If they're colouring in with a crayon, does it sort of destroy the book, or does it, you know, does it serve its purpose? And then support is obviously teacher training, pedagogical support like that, but also more generally sales support and customer care. Okay, let's move on then to talk first about curriculum. There are various different strands within this. First of all, thinking about level. Now, Graham has talked in lots of detail about the CFR, which is typically what we at Cambridge University Press would use to make sure we are pitching our material at the right level for students. It's really interesting for me to hear that's now part of your national curriculum, because our material is aligned with the CFR. The next point is about the quantity and the pace. Obviously, we have to think about whether this is appropriate, a word which came up in the chat, I noticed, appropriate for the abilities of the children. And of course, whatever we do needs to be taught in manageable chunks. There's no point in teaching 12 vocabulary items if actually the children's brains at this age are only capable of remembering 5 or 6. And we're really aware of this when we're planning material. The next point is about the choice of learning objectives. So, you know, are we focusing on the right things? For example, we want to make sure that there's a balance between all 4 skills, because it's really important that they can do all of them. We also want to make sure that the topics are relevant to this age group. You know, if you're teaching 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds, it's much more engaging for them to talk about things that they know. So talking about their favorite animal or their favorite food is much more meaningful for them than talking about something you might learn at an older age, like, I don't know, more formal greetings, or how to write an email, or how to write a text message. The next point I've got here is about progression. Obviously, it's really important that a curriculum progresses and builds and does so in a manageable way. The other point I'd link to this, though, is that for very young learners, you need loads of recycling and revisiting language, because we all know learners this age learn quickly, learn a lot very quickly, but they also forget it really quickly. So we have to keep going back, recycling, and, you know, reinforcing that learning. And we build all this into our curriculum development. The last point I've got here is about the whole child. This is really asking, what do we want to cover beyond the language objectives? I don't need to tell you that pre-primary is incredibly holistic. So it's about emotional development and motor skills development and social skills, cognitive skills, just as much as language learning. And we really want to reflect that in our curriculum development. At Cambridge, we're really lucky because we have this Cambridge framework for life competencies. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's something that we're finding really useful at the moment, because it's a framework, a really detailed framework, which allows us to map out graded objectives for these kind of transferable skills. It has categories such as creative thinking, learning to learn, collaboration, critical thinking, communication, and social responsibilities. So we're working on how we can really meaningfully integrate that into our courses. So for example, in a course that me and some of my colleagues have been working on recently for preschool, which is called Pippa and Pop, we've actually integrated a learning to learn strand in the curriculum of the course that systematically builds in activities which will help learners develop autonomy. And that gradually puts in place foundations. We're talking at a very, very simple level, but the foundations for a really solid school career where learners become conscious of their own learning, active participants in their own learning. And it really just provides the sort of techniques and knowledge to become aware and improve learning for themselves. I'll give you a sneak peek of that course later, but just to summarize everything we've said about curriculum, it's really about having a coherent plan for the whole of a school year, you know, or even the whole of preschool, actually. And that makes learning as effective as possible. Okay, I'm going to move on to pedagogy, which was another of the strands in our overall framework. Good pedagogy means having activities which are designed so that they maximize learning. This means reflecting the latest research into how people best learn an additional language. It's about knowing what's effective and what's not effective, and really building in the effective stuff. My first point here is about catering for mixed abilities. We know that a lot of teachers find this their number one difficulty, and it's because kids progress at different rates, right? We all know that, but it causes real challenges in a classroom. So in our course books, in our teachers' books, we provide guidance and support and ideas for adjusting for different abilities. Related to that is our next point, which is about providing a broad range of components. I've got some examples here. So for us, that really means providing a lot of different ways of accessing the material. So it allows frequent changes of focus and a broad variety of stimuli. So at Cambridge, with our pre-primary courses, we provide, for example, interactive classroom presentation software. You can see that there on the right-hand side. That includes digital versions of all of the books, so you can actually see them projected onto an interactive whiteboard or a projector, and there are interactive activities associated with the pages within that. It also includes interactive games, which we know children absolutely love and teachers always ask us for. In addition to that, we've got components like puppets. This is my friend Pippa. So Pippa's one of the main characters in our new course, and this is Pippa the puppet, who I hope you can see. She's very lovely, and I might have to just give her a little cuddle every now and again because she is just the best, aren't you, Pippa? Yes. So puppets is also a really important thing that we provide, because we know that that sense of attachment for young children is really important, and it means that they can, you know, they can play with her, they can interact with her, and that sort of makes it real for them. We also provide flashcards, big books, so, you know, big versions of the stories, as well as things like stickers, and all the things you'd expect: pupils' books, activity books, teachers' books, and so on. And we know that this broad variety of components really does matter to teachers. So we're committed to providing it. I'm just going to put Pippa down now, but now that you've seen her, I hope that you're in love with her like we are. Why is this so important? Why do we produce so much stuff? Well, it's because we know that very young learners have very short attention spans. And we need to be able, as teachers, as materials providers, to change the pace of the lesson very quickly. So teachers need lots of games up their sleeve, and they need to be able to harness all of that crazy preschooler energy into something constructive. So with flashcards, you can play games. With digital games, again, you can consolidate the learning in a way which is dynamic and interesting. We also know it's really important to be able to settle the kids down, calm the energy in the class. And so, for example, we provide the big books to allow teachers with students to access the story in a calm way, all together, looking at the big images and sharing that story time together. We also provide loads of animations, because that's a different way of revisiting or the story, or watching it for the first time in a way that really fires up the kids' imagination. We also know that routines are hugely important for this age group, really, really valuable, because research shows that routines make children feel secure. And when you feel secure, you're much more open to learning. So really, that sense of familiarity and comfort should be our first priority. And that's why with our new classroom presentation software for preschoolers, we've built in a routines board section. And the idea of this is that it's your go-to place. So at the start of the lesson, there are interactive activities you can do to talk about what day is it, what's the weather like today, what month is it anybody's birthday today? And this kind of familiarity really gets kids in the zone for learning English. We also have a fun little hello song, which is a kind of trigger, now it's English time. We also have for the end of the class, a goodbye song. Again, a kind of trigger for, okay, tidy up time, everybody get ready to go. We really think this is going to help teachers. Pedagogy is also about showing some innovation. And we're really fortunate at Cambridge. One of the things that being a big organisation allows us to do is to have dedicated research teams. And their whole role is to keep us up to date with research in effective language learning and helping us integrate those strategies into our courses. I'll tell you a couple that we've been thinking about, particularly for pre-primary, just to give you an idea of the kind of things that we're looking at in a lot of detail. The first one here is about learning through play. There's an awful lot of evidence building now, which shows that play is essential for young children, for developing critical thinking, creative thinking, and social skills, of course, like collaboration, sharing. And this research is coming out at the same time as internationally, a lot of children's time for play is actually being squeezed. There's less and less time for play because kids, kids have a lot going on in their lives. And so we really wanted to incorporate play in our coursebook, our Pippa and Pop coursebook. And so we've incorporated suggestions in the teacher's book in every unit, a couple of times in every unit, for activities which will help children learn through play, guiding the teachers how to do it and also guiding them in why it's important. So there's an example here about doing a little role play about being at events. So this is, I think this is a really lovely one. It encourages the children to use animal language, of course. It also encourages them, though, to do things like being gentle, being kind, and also taking turns. And I think it's a really nice example of what we were talking about earlier with the holistic nature of pre-primary, but also using language. We've also taken a research-informed approach to early literacy. Now, obviously, at this age, most children can't read and write, or they're just starting to, but this is the age where you set those foundations. And if you get it right, you can really give children an advantage. So in our teachers' books for the Pippa and Pop course, we've included these literacy development tips. And they occur whenever there's a story that the children are hearing from their teachers. This one is, I think, a really nice one. After they read the story, the teacher asks the children how the different characters feel in that story and why they're acting in a particular way. Now, this could be done in the children's first language. There's no expectation that they have to speak English to do this. But encouraging children to make those connections, to observe what's going on in the story and to think about their own experience of the world is really important, because it helps children to develop those skills, those inferring skills, but also, empathy skills, people skills, which is so fundamental to success at school and in life in general. Okay, and then finally, I also wanted to mention digital pedagogy, because this is such a big area. It's huge, and it's so important that we get this right for the next generation. We're exploring this and really looking at the research that's already out there. We want to know what kind of digital activities have the most impact in language learning. We also want to know practical questions like, what's the optimum amount of time for a child to spend engaging with an electronic device? Are there limits on that? And we really want to know how we can best use digital components to consolidate what's going on in class at home. How can we build that link with parents? How can we really maximize that opportunity for learning? I could go on. I could talk all day about digital pedagogy because it's so important to us, and we really are working very hard to understand, as much as we can about this hugely important area. But I'll move on. So the next point was about content. This means thinking about the material on an activity by activity basis. There are some really important questions here about whether, whether each activity is clear. Is the presentation of language clear? Do they understand it? Is the activity itself, what the children have to do, is that clear? And sometimes I think about this and I wonder, how many classroom management issues actually the root cause, how often is the root cause of that children not really understanding what's expected of them, what they have to do. I had an example this week with my own son where this happened. He had an activity that he didn't understand, and instead of asking the teacher, he didn't do it. He didn't do the activity. And then he got really upset and really cross, and it blew up into a massive tantrum. And I'm not making excuses for him, but I do think this is very, very common. So maybe as materials developers, as teachers, we can do something to stop, to stop it from getting to that point. The next point here is about engagement. That's a word that came up, didn't it, in the comments? And I often think, if you think back to your own experiences of preschool and school, what are the memories that stick out? For me, it's things like playing in the water play area and playing with sand, and the birthdays and how we celebrated birthdays. Now, I think that tells us something. I think it tells us that the things that are fun are the things that we remember. And of course, we want children to remember their English learning. In fact, at Cambridge, we want English to be their favourite subject. I think that's really important. How are we going to do that? I think it's about how engaging the content is. So one of the things we do at Cambridge is to provide lots and lots of animations and audiovisual material in general. And we really are really proud of what we've been able to achieve and how much of this kind of content we're providing. We think it's great because we know that kids love watching them, and it really helps them to bond with these lovely characters. You can see Pippa and Pop here on my slide, and it sort of helps immerse students in the characters' world. And we think that immersion is really, really important. This animation is actually a story to develop literacy skills, and the story is about a duck. But what you can see here is our main characters, Pippa and Pop, who introduce the story. Now, just to give you the background to this, Pippa and Pop live in a lovely, welcoming, cozy bookshop. But they live kind of behind the scenes. They don't interact with the human characters. But when the humans aren't around at nighttime, the mice wander around the bookshop and pick out books to read because they love books. And so the way that the stories are presented are as though they've been chosen by these lovely little mice characters to share with the learners. And in this way, I hope you can see that we're providing a kind of funny context to introduce the story. I'll try, let's hope it works. I'll try and show you a little bit of the animation.
Duck is sad. Duck wants a friend. Duck sees a fish.
Quack! Quack! Hello, fish! Play with me, please.
The fish goes away.
Quack! Quack!
Poor duck. It's okay, it doesn't finish there. I promise you it does have a happy ending, but I haven't got time to show you it all. I hope that gives you a taster, a flavour of the kind of thing we're hoping to achieve with our animations. And you can see also we've got, you know, the way the animation works is that the pages turn over. All of this is designed to help kids get into books, to get into reading, which we know is so important for their overall, you know, outcomes across all subjects. Okay, finally, a little point about inclusivity. We want learners to see themselves in our books. There's an awful lot of evidence which says that it's really important that they identify with the people in our books, and that kind of representation matters hugely. It makes a real difference to how children feel about their learning. And it's something that at Cambridge we feel really strongly about. So, you know, for a long time we've shown a range of ethnicities in our books, which of course is really important when our books are being used across the world. More than ever, we are checking that we're providing the right balance. You know, we think about other kinds of representation too. This particular unit that I'm showing you here is about family, and it's introducing family words. And here we're showing different types of family, because we know that some kids have single parents, some kids don't have grandparents, some kids don't have siblings, and so on. Families are all different, and we're really sensitive to that. So that's just an example of the kind of inclusivity that we're really thinking about. Okay, I think that's all we've got time for today. I hope it's given you a bit of an insight into our thinking about quality and how thoroughly we really plan this in when we're developing new materials at Cambridge. The course that I've been referring to is called Pippa and Pop, and it will be available from January 22, next January. So if you're interested in that, I'm sure GPEX will be able to help you with more information from January. Before I finish, there's just one last thing I wanted to say, which is that obviously we're really passionate about developing material that works for you, our customers. And to do that well, to get it right for your students, we really need your input. So we need to hear from you. If you think you'd be interested in helping us to shape future courses, we'd really love that input. The team at GPEX have offered to put me in touch with teachers. I believe you have a Telegram channel which you could use for this. If it sounds like something you'd be interested in, then please watch out for more information, which I think will be coming there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily, for such an insightful sharing. Now, don't worry, we will always be keeping in touch through the Telegram channel in the future in case we have more questions. You know, some of our kindergarten partners, some of our teachers here, as they are using the course book, or if they have more questions related to that and to contribute to the research that you guys are doing in Cambridge, then they can contact us via the Telegram channel. And we will also be keeping in touch through there as well. And really thank you for sharing that, you know, a very different perspective on when you guys are publishing and, you know, creating the content and the curriculum for the books. I think this will really help us immensely when it comes to choosing what we would regard as a quality content. And it will help teachers and institutions as well when they are planning for next year or the years to come. So really thank you, Emily, once again.